Mr. President.
Suzanne Malvo.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the thousands of U.S. troops and billions of dollars in aid that still pour into Afghanistan, can you talk to the American people and give us a sense of where we stand, how close we are to winning this war in Afghanistan, and whether or not you'll be able to meet your goal of pulling out the majority of U.S. troops by July of 2011? And to President Karzai, is there anything that you can do, your government or your people, to maintain that deadline, that end game of July 2011? And have you found your meetings with Iran's President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad to be helpful or hurtful in your relationship with the Obama administration? Thank you.
Well, Suzanne, first of all, let's be clear about what July 2011 represents. What I have said is that having put in more troops over the last several months in order to break the momentum of the Taliban, that beginning in 2011, July, we will start bringing those troops down and turning over more and more responsibility to Afghan security forces that we are building up. But we are not suddenly, as of July 2011, finished with Afghanistan. In fact, to the contrary, part of what I've tried to emphasize to President Karzai and the Afghan people, but also to the American people, is this is a long-term partnership that is not simply defined by our military presence. I am confident that we're going to be able to reduce our troop strength in Afghanistan starting in July 2011, and I am in constant discussions with General McChrystal as well as Ambassador Eikenberry about the execution of that time frame. But after July 2011, we are still going to have an interest in making sure that Afghanistan is secure, that economic development is taking place, that good governance is being promoted. And so we're going to still be putting in resources, and we're still going to be a friend to the Afghan people in their efforts to stabilize. So that's something I want to make absolutely clear. Now, to the American people, I think what they should know is that we are steadily making progress. It's not overnight. It's not going to be instant. But the sacrifices of those young people that President Karzai visited in Walter Reed, those sacrifices result over time in more and more of Afghanistan being under the control of the Afghan government and our friend and ally, President Karzai, and less under the control of the Taliban. As I indicated in my opening remarks, this is not just going to be a military solution. And so through the peace jirga that President Karzai is organizing, through the Kabul conference that sends a strong message about the Afghan government's commitment to rule of law and good governance and human rights and women's rights, through all those mechanisms, more and more the Afghan people start feeling confident in the Afghan government. And as their confidence in the Afghan government grows, their fear of the Taliban weakens. And we are confident that that approach that has a strong military component to it, that is mindful of the enormous sacrifices that our troops and their families are making, that component is critical, but these other components are going to be critical as well. And if we marry those two approaches, then we are optimistic about success. But there are going to be ups and downs, and one thing that I've tried to emphasize is the fact that there's going to be some hard fighting over the next several months. The fact that we are engaging, you look at a place like Marja, the Taliban controlled that area. And when you move in and you say you're not controlling this area anymore, they're going to fight back. And they're tough, and they're going to fight. But what you're seeing, not only have we succeeded in driving the Taliban out of Marja, but it also is a model of the partnership between U.S. forces and Afghan forces. And so you're starting to see Afghan government forces battle ready, toughened, getting more experience. That then helps us to execute a transition so that more and more Afghan forces are able to take the lead. But this is going to be taking some time. One last point I want to make, because President Karzai referred to the issue of civilian casualties. The Afghan journalist asked about it. Let me be very clear about what I told President Karzai. When there is a civilian casualty, that is not just a political problem for me. I am ultimately accountable, just as General McChrystal is accountable, for somebody who's not on the battlefield who got killed. And that is something that I have to carry with me, and that anybody who's involved in a military operation has to carry with them. And so we do not take that lightly. We have an interest in reducing civilian casualties, not because it's a problem for President Karzai. We have an interest in reducing civilian casualties because I don't want civilians killed. And we are going to do everything we can to prevent that. Now, war is tough and difficult, and mistakes are going to be made, and our troops put themselves at risk oftentimes in order to reduce civilian casualties. They will take a chance often in a field of battle where they're trying to deal with uncertain information, and they're not sure whether that's an attack coming or not, or which house these shots are being fired from. And because of General McChrystal's direction, oftentimes they're holding fire, they're hesitating, they're being cautious about how they operate, even though it would be safer for them to go ahead and just take these locations out, because part of what the American military stands for is that we distinguish between civilians and combatants, something, by the way, that our enemies do not do. And that puts us more at risk, and it makes it more difficult. But that's a burden that we're willing to bear. But I want everybody to be clear, especially the Afghan people. I take no pleasure in hearing a report that a civilian has been killed. That's not why I ran for president. That's not why I'm commander-in-chief. That's not why our young men and women sign up. That's not why they sacrifice in the ways that President Karzai saw they sacrifice when they're in Walter Reed. And we are going to work together as assiduously as we can to make sure that those civilian casualties are reduced, even as we try to accomplish a mission, and even as we are reminding ourselves constantly that the overwhelming majority of civilian casualties in Afghanistan are as a consequence of terrorist acts by the Taliban. President Karzai.
Ma'am, on the July 2011, Afghanistan's army and police are progressing steadily towards strengthening and towards institutionalizing. We plan to be conducting providing security for our country in major parts of the country where we have the ability within the next 2 years. And by the time my term of office completes in 4 years, 4.5 years from today, Afghanistan is working hard to provide security for the whole of the country. Through the Afghan means and Afghan security institutions. On the overall picture, President Obama spoke for both of us on the issue of July 2011. On the question of Iran and my meeting with President Ahmadinejad in Tehran and his visit to Kabul,